Today is Monday, July 21st, 2025, and this is Spring Office Hours, Season 4, Episode 20, Spring Community Q&A Hodgepodge. My name is Dan Vega, Spring Developer Advocate at Broadcom, joined by my good friend and colleague, DaShaun Carter. DaShaun, how's it going?
It's fantastic. It's a wonderful day. It's a great day to be a Spring developer. That's for sure.
How are you doing? And you're coming to us from a car. You're on the road.
From a car. Literally. I had all these great ideas. I'm going to go out to the park. I got my dog with me. We're going to go out to the park. And my computer said, no, you're not. It is too hot outside. I'm not doing this. So here we are.
Got the air conditioning AC running in the car?
I got the AC running. I'm outside of an AMC theater because my family's in watching How to Train Your Dragon. So that we can do this. I had to have my space. I really look forward to Spring Office Hours. Like, just to be clear, I look forward.
I mean, that movie sounds fun too. There's so many good movies going on right now. The new Smurfs movie's out, Superman. I want to see so many movies. So
there's a lot of movies coming out. I can't argue with that. So I got to say something. We're doing a Q&A today more than ever. I got to remind everybody, when you come to my house for dinner, if you leave hungry, that's your fault. Today, we're doing Q&A. So if you're here live, first of all, you got to tell us where you're from, say hi. But then you got to know that if you've got questions and you don't ask them, that is your fault.
Absolutely.
It's Q&A. This is what we're doing. But before we get into that, we got some other things that we need to discuss. There's a lot of happening right now.
Yeah, there is. Actually, let me just kind of mention too. This is a usually every Monday, 1 to 2 Eastern. This is a live recording, so we have everybody in the audience. If you can make the live Spring Office Hours, get here, ask your questions. If not, you can go ahead and catch the replay on the Spring Developer YouTube channel. We also turn this into a podcast, so you can get this wherever you get your podcast. Now, we've been having on a lot of really great guests lately, DaShaun, but we talked about it and we said we need to have a little just kind of catching up with each other, find out what's going on in the community, and hopefully answer some questions. So that's what we're going to do today. And these are always some of my favorite episodes, so we're going to have some fun with it today. Now, one of the things that's going on is we are getting closer to August, and we have some events coming up in August, which I'm really excited about. So I'm going to start with KCDC, which is where you're from, Kansas City.
Absolutely. Fantastic.
Always one of my favorite conferences because it's so diverse. There is a Java track there, but there's a lot of other things going on. So I love getting to kind of have conversations with different communities and kind of see what's cool in your community. What are you guys talking about? Right? I know everybody's talking about AI, but what are the things you're dealing with right now? So that's always a lot of fun. And everybody who puts on KCDC is awesome, including good friend of the show, Billy Cornado. So, and you, of course. I know you're involved.
I'll be there. I'll be helping out.
The real question every year, though, when it comes to KCDC, you know this.
What are you going to do for barbecue? What kind of barbecue?
Are we going to eat some barbecue?
That's the main thing. That's the decision that you have to make on your way to Kansas City. You got to figure out which barbecue are we going to eat, when and how much of it, and have I prepared myself? Have I prepared my stomach for the Kansas City barbecue?
Have you trained?
Yes. These are important.
We get some barbecue at the speaker dinner, which is awesome. But then we always go out another night. What's the one place we've been going to? It's got the
one that's
you
right
and
down
Josh and Nate. Yeah.
And I cannot think of the name.
Oh no! Oh, it's so good.
I can't think of the name.
I can't wait. I can't wait to go there. Well, whatever the name is.
Q39 is one that we went to.
Maybe.
Which is a good one. The Kansas City Joe's is another good one. Jack Stack. Those are kind of my top three.
That's it. Jack Stack. Yeah.
There you go.
That was a good one. So yeah, looking forward to that. Usually it's beginning of June. Moved to middle of August this year. But that's okay because that's going to really kick conference season off for me. We got KCDC, SpringOne, and then a whole bunch of things going on in September. So
wait, when is SpringOne again?
Speaking of SpringOne, end of August, August 20, what is that, 5th to the 28th. And yeah, a lot of stuff going on here. So we talked about this last week, and I know somebody asked a question about this, but this is SpringOne happening at Explore. So Explore is the kind of overall conference, which is like 4 days. There's a whole bunch of things going on. 10,000 people come here. SpringOne is kind of baked into Explore, and there are a whole bunch of Spring dedicated breakout sessions to Spring. And I mentioned this last week, but I know there was some confusion around it. There are packages like, hey, if I just want to see like the Spring content, that is the Essentials package. So if you're interested in just viewing that, that's the Essentials package. If you want to go there and get the rest of Explore content, that's great too. But there'll be a lot of really great breakout sessions on Spring. And I know the scheduler is now live. So if you are going, you can go start scheduling those sessions, and you'll want to. If you want to say, hey, like I really want to see that talk by DaShaun, you favorite it. You can add it to your schedule and get it on the schedule so you know what you're doing. You can always change your mind later, but I suggest when you go to some of these bigger conferences, you want to kind of build out your schedule so you know where you're going to go to. There's the session set. This is what I wanted to look at too. So if you go into sessions, and we just do a little filter here of Spring. Oh, look at that guy. Spring and MCP. So you could see all of the different breakout sessions, the quick talks. There are Meet the Expert roundtables. So roundtable with Spring Cloud team. That should be a lot of fun. Looks like Spencer and Ryan. That'll be fun. And then just different breakout sessions. So these are some really cool sessions that you want to dive into. Oh, look at that one. What's coming in Spring Boot 4.0 by Phil Webb. So that'll be awesome. So I would say that if you're really interested, it's going to be a lot of fun. We got a question here. Is there going to be a live stream? So is there going to be probably of Spring? I'm not sure yet. I don't know if we're going to live stream any of that. So
in the past, if we have done a live stream, what we did was we live streamed the general session.
Yeah.
Like the highlights, hey, here's what's going to happen. And that was the only thing that got live streamed.
Well, no. Last year was different, right? Last year we didn't have really an in-person presence. We didn't kind of invite the general community to that conference because of everything kind of turning from COVID. So we're kind of going back to 2 years ago. So what I imagine is like the general public is coming to this event. I think 2 years ago, we live streamed the keynote, the general session, as you said, but I don't know if we're going to live stream breakout sessions and things like that. We did it last year because everything was in, what did we call it? In the hub area at that one stage, the Spring Spotlight maybe, or whatever it was, the Spring Theater, right? And everything was there. And I think live streamed most of those sessions. So I don't think it's going to be like that this year, but I could be wrong, but I will check on that for you. But as always, we do take those and record them and put them up on the Spring Developer YouTube channel later on. But I will get some more answers to that and hopefully answer that next week.
Nothing replaces being there in person, but I understand Baraka's from Kenya, and that makes for quite a trip. I know. So,
didn't you just go there?
Baraka, I did, and I met Baraka actually, and he's amazing. And one of the things, like while we're talking about it, one of the things that he did was he's like, "Hey, you taught me something, and it's different than what I've been doing, what I was doing in practice." And what he did, which I'm just super excited about, is he went home the following workday, and he took something at work and he did an experiment. He challenged himself, like what he was doing, what he was taking to production, and he tried something different. And what he realized was, hey, this is a better way. Like I do have some other options that are better than the ones that I've been using and taking in production. And that alone is a big deal. Challenging yourself, not revisiting your assumptions. That's what I like to call it, like re-level setting, like saying like, hey, we've been doing this thing this same way for this long. Is that the right solution? Being able to do that. And when I say these things, I'm always thinking about our good friend Nate, like challenging. What does it mean to be an architect? What does it mean to be a senior? And he always would say, like, it's sticking around long enough to see the outcomes of your decisions, but also sticking around long enough to challenge your own decisions, right? I put those two in the same hat. Like, that is just a powerful thing, and he did a good job of that. And I was really impressed.
Love it. So cool. If you have some questions, get them in. We'll see if we can answer them. If you have some things you just want to talk about, like, hey, have you tried this cool new tool? This is a Q&A and a hodgepodge. So we're just going to spend an hour talking about whatever we feel like until you go ahead and give us something to talk about. But I do want to mention
something.
Oh, yeah.
Spring Data 2025. Have you taken a look at what's coming in Spring Data 2025?
I have not, except the things that we've kind of heard from kind of the early rumblings, especially around the enhancements on the AOT for like the repositories. So basically getting that, hey, I'm not sure what this query is doing. So it's actually going to like, there are some nice like integrations into like IntelliJ too, where it like shows you what the exact query is. So there you're no longer kind of guessing what that's going to look like. So yeah, there's some cool things there, but I haven't really dug into anything else.
One of the things that we get pulled into a lot of is the data questions. And one of the challenging things is when we go and work with customers, communities, even the local Java user groups, especially when I mentioned Dan, like everybody assumes that Dan knows everything because he's talked about so many things on his YouTube channel that everybody assumes that, of course, Dan has done this really esoteric edge case with this particular data store and he knows all the answers. Of course he's done it.
No.
And it's not always the case. We don't always have all the answers, but we do work with companies all over the globe. And we do hear these patterns. We do hear things that have worked. And we also hear things that haven't worked. And one of the things that has been very popular, I guess that's a relative term, for me in conversations over the last month and a half, always comes back to the data. And the data conversations are interesting because the decisions that we make a lot of times really depend on where our data is and how our data is being stored. And there's so many decisions to make. So this is just, it's a fun topic that there's always these options that we have. And those options always depend on what's on your menu. What are the options that are available to you as a developer? And when I start down this path, I always think about, back in the early 2000s, when Postgres or MySQL was the only thing on the menu, we had to do some interesting things. We did a lot of things that you would never consider doing today with these databases, nor we shouldn't have, but that was the only thing that was on the menu. So when you've got a problem to solve, the options that are available to you on your menu, what's supported on your path to production, that's really important. Having the right options on the menu is really, really important. So before we get into the data conversations, just take a moment to think about, do you have the right options? What's missing from your menu? What are the things that you wish were on the menu on your path to production? I know what the number one thing for me is I'm trying to teach my children to never deploy active passive. I want my children to live an active life. And this is a fun conversation, but this is also a thing that just at an enterprise type of a situation for the customers that we're going to every week, that kind of seems like it should be a table stake. I should be able to deploy things in an active format, and the data story is the real kicker, right? We can deploy our stateless microservices. We can deploy those active. That's easy. But what are they connecting to? Is that data store also active? That's an important decision. And if that's not on the menu, it should be. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I've got some questions lately, and one of which was like, hey, I really want to become an expert in Spring like you. And I'm like, I don't know that I'm an expert in Spring. I I have a pretty good breadth of experience in Spring, depth in certain places. We just had a nice conversation. This wasn't on this podcast, something internal, on Spring integration with our good friend Artem. And I was like, I don't have a lot of experience with Spring integration. So just because you see like videos of me like working on different things at different times, I dabble in a lot of the different projects. But if you're in a company where you guys are using like Spring Cloud and Spring integration all the time and working with microservices, you probably have more experience on some of these things than I do, especially around those edge cases. So yeah, and again, I think, you know, when I get questions asked like this, what does expert mean, right? Like if all you do is work on Spring integration all the time, you're much more of an expert at integration than I am. And an expert for me is like, oh, as you said, like I have enough breadth to know that like when things come up, I know which tools to reach for. So in that sense, I guess that I can be an expert on because I know what to reach for and what is the right tool for the right job. And then I can go farther down that rabbit hole when I need to, right?
This is one of the goals for me of this show is I want to give our audience the understanding, like, hey, there's a tool over here that will help you in this case. There's a tool, there's a library over here that will help you in this case. That's what we're trying to do. That's one of the things I would like to do. It's kind of like make sure that you understand what's possible. What are the things that I can put on the menu? I will diverge for just one sec. Mohammed, there is a upcoming meetup in Olathe, and the next meetup is I don't know which date, but the next one is Spring AI and RAG, and it's not me, and it's not Dan, and it's not Josh. It's somebody else. So you ought to come and check it out. That's the Kansas City Java user group. It's going to be at the Garmin headquarters, and that's coming up real soon. It might be this week, so you should check it out. But yeah, thanks.
Nice. Cool.
Talking about having the breadth. I use this term called T-shaped.
Yeah.
Where I believe in order to be a good engineer, good, better, best, in order to be a good engineer, you should be trying to build out this T-shape, have a breadth, understand, if you're a fan of Spring like we are, understand the Spring projects and which ones you're going to lean into. There's a lot of ways to do things, right? Spring integration is one. And you should understand where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are. But I think you should also go deep on a few of them.
For sure.
Right? Go deep on a couple of those projects, the ones that you use every day, the ones that are going to be of value. And that's what I call a T-shaped developer. I got that from multiple books that kind of reference that. But I really like that idea, and I kind of lean into that.
I referenced that in my upcoming book too as well, DaShaun. And one of the things was kind of, you know, when you're working in your career and you want to work towards a goal, like you can't learn everything. Like it's just impossible. If you're hoping to do that, I'm telling you now, I've been doing this for 20 plus years. You're never going to do that. So what you have to do is like, you have to focus on your goals. Like, what do you want to get out of this career? And so working backwards from your goals, like this is where I want to be at in 5 years, whatever, if it's a role, if it's a company, work backwards from that. And here are the technologies I need to be really proficient on to get to that goal. But knowing that there are other things that you just need to like have a surface level understanding of, so that if you're in a conversation, we talked about Redis a couple of weeks ago, right? Like, hey, Redis is a cache. It's also a database. Like, here are the things that you can use with it. Play with it once or twice, but you don't need to go like really deep with it. Like, these are just things that you should know at a surface level so that you can have a conversation about them.
One of the cool things that came out of last week's episode on Redis was there was in our audience, there was kind of some revisiting. They're like, oh, these are some hot topics. And oh, look over here in Spring Data Redis. There's some PRs that address semantic caching, semantic routing, for example.
Yeah.
Like maybe we ought to look at. So just by doing our show and having our audience like raise their hand, like we have some effort that's been moved in that direction. Fantastic. One of the things I want to address is like when you're planning your career, and this is a thing that I think happens too often. I think what happens is developers say, oh, there's a cool new technology. I want to go be an expert in that cool new technology. But what they don't realize is we're not using that cool new technology inside of our company. That's not adding any value to my current job. I've made this distinction for engineers in general. Going and learning the cool new technology that doesn't help you in your current role is not as valuable as finding the gaps. I talk about our team. We have a Venn diagram. Josh covers this many things. Cora does this. Dan does this. Cody does this. If I want to help out, if I want to move my career forward, I want to find out the gaps. I want to find out where my Venn diagram, my circle, is going to fill in that Venn diagram the most. But it's got to be something that's helping our team move forward. Where are the gaps in my team? And I'm very, very passionate about this. Finding those things that are gaps, that are weaknesses in your current team, not the hot new thing. Find things that are the gaps or the weaknesses in your team and go deep on those. If you want to level up, if you want to get better opportunities, that's the way to go. It's not, hey, we don't use Kubernetes. I'm going to go be a Kubernetes expert. And then we still don't use Kubernetes. That's not the way to go. Find the gap, find something, fill in the shoes of the expert that left, right? Somebody took some technology, Spring integration, they took it to production, and now you don't have a Spring integration expert. Go there, find that. Instead of trying to find a new technology, go in and be the expert, find that gap. And again, build your T on that.
Definitely. Great advice, DaShaun. Thank you. Cool. Any questions? Please get some questions in. We'll see if we can't answer them. What else have you been working on? What have you been working on lately?
AI is a thing, but I've actually been leaning into Spring Cloud. I've been leaning into Spring Cloud and all the amazing things that Spring Cloud does, and just building, right? Toying around with it, building out different implementations. I still do use Kubernetes, but we also have Cloud Foundry, and our implementation of Cloud Foundry has a lot of the Spring Cloud stuff out of the box. But again, going back to the active thing, I want to do multiple installations of my apps, have them being deployed on different platforms, and have all the things that I believe developers want. Being able to say, like, hey, from my git commit, like, get it to production. But then I also want to see how things are behaving. I want to know that if I go and destroy a cluster or a region or whatever, I want to know my application is still going to behave, that it's still going to handle the traffic that it needs to. So I'm just building out. I'm looking for another cool use case that I can demo, to be honest. I want something that's real, that's that the audience can touch and submit things to. And I'm just toying around with a couple of ideas.
Cool.
So leaning into Spring Cloud and having fun with that lately.
Nice. I mentioned this in my newsletter this morning. I had a couple of videos last week around some like real world use cases. So one is, everybody's been talking about MCPs. Obviously I have too. We've done some shows on them. And I thought I would show off like a real world use case of an MCP server that I built. So I publish a newsletter on a platform called Beehive, and I publish this. I use like their authoring experience, and I send it out to like a list of email addresses, but then I take that and I publish it on my website. And so beforehand, this was a very manual process, because text in a document versus the actual markdown I needed on my website were very different. So I'd have to like publish here and then convert there. And so I built an MCP server so that I can integrate it into something like Claude Desktop and say, go grab my latest draft and turn it into the markdown based on these rules I give you. And hey, also maybe, check for grammar and spelling mistakes, suggest any improvements to, those kind of things. And so now when I finish it, I just load it up. I ask Claude to go ahead and fix it and publish it as Markdown. And then it has access to another MCP server that can actually write the file out as Markdown onto my local machine. And then I can just commit that and I'm off and running. So I think it's a lot of these scenarios where it's like, and again, as I think as developers, we do this all the time, right? We are trained to know that, like, if I start doing this same thing over and over and it's a pain in my butt, I got to find a way to automate this somehow. And MCP servers integrating with AI is giving me like a new way to kind of automate these things. So it's been a lot of fun.
One of your recent posts shares about how you're using Claude Code.
Yep,
more
that was
often.
the other one. Yep.
This is something I'm also kind of leaning into. I don't want to let the rest of the world pass me by. I've kind of been hesitant to use the public models for whatever reason. First of all, I just don't have the money to use the public models, and I know it's very affordable. But if I'm going to integrate these things in my daily routine, I've been leaning into something called Continue.
Yep.
Where it's a plugin for IntelliJ. It also has it for VS Code. But what it allows me to do is access the models that are running on my machine. So when I'm traveling in the car, when I'm on a plane, or when I'm at a customer, I don't have to worry about VPN connectivity. I'm connected to local, but it also does this other really interesting thing. It stores the questions that I ask, and it builds a context that I can then use to refine the model. I can do this kind of a diffusion pattern on some of the models that I'm deploying. So I can get faster responses, and I can do that. I haven't gotten to that stage yet, but I'm building that context. I can see that it's building that context locally, and this is what I've leaned into. So I'm trying to come up with what is this new. I say pair programming, but when I say pair programming, I'm capitalizing the A and the I. What does this new model look like? And I've enjoyed it quite a bit.
Yeah, I'd say, one of the biggest things for me is like all these tools that came out, like Cursor and Windsurf and Junie, and I've tried a lot of them. And a lot of them in this space, and I guess it's kind of, the term vibe coding can kind of go two different ways, right? One, for somebody who doesn't know how to code, it can give them the ability to take an idea and produce something quickly, right? So for our non-programmers out there, which again, I'm not a gatekeeper. So I think this is a great use case for like vibe coding. But on the other side of it, if we have experienced engineers, vibe coding for me is not just like clicking buttons and saying, yes, 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 accept, accept, accept. And what I found in some of these tools, like a Windsurf and Junie, is that I tell it to do something and it goes, okay, I'm going to go off and do this thing. And it does all this thing. And yes, you can interact and like say no or yes, accept. But then you end up with this project where you're like, it's not kind of exactly what I was looking for. Now I got to like reiterate on that or like debug some issues. For me, and maybe other tools are doing this too, but for me, Claude Code has something called a planning mode. And this is, for me, like, this is where I want to start. If me and you were sitting down and we were going to build something, we would have this exact conversation. Like, let's talk about this thing that we're about to build. What is it? What are some things we should think about? How do we want to build this thing? And that's what planning mode is. And then it'll come up with a plan and it'll say, this is the plan. And I go, that's a good plan, but not exactly what I was looking for. Let's change these 2 or 3 things. Then I'll come up with another plan. And it goes, and then I'm like, okay, yes, this is a good plan. Go off and do your thing. Because now I find that like once it gets there, maybe it's not perfect, but at least I know what it's going to build. And if it falls short, it's probably not a lot. It's probably just a little bit of a change, right? So that's why I've been really leaning into that. And I think one of my biggest takeaways, if you're whatever tools you're using, one of my biggest takeaways from this and advice, if you're using any kind of like agents when you're coding, come up with a plan and then work on small features and pull branches, take a branch for that feature. So don't just code me the next 10,000 line SaaS application, right? Come up with a plan and say, okay, this is a great plan. Let's start with step number 1, create a branch for that. Because now if anything happens over here, we could always just delete that branch and start again. And we can always test that in a branch and then merge that. Again, these are these are things we have developers have been doing for years, right? Probably most of my career, right? But as we enter this new space of like vibe coding, right? People aren't doing this. And so this is what I'm trying to like get out there is like all of the things we do in the software development lifecycle are still very important. It's just somebody else, a robot in this case, writing the code. But none of this other stuff should change. It's all still kind of stay the same.
What you addressed, I don't know if you addressed it like head on. It's like having a good Git hygiene, Git patterns.
Yep.
That's an important piece of this. Our friend Andrew Clay Schaefer says, vibe coding will do the first 80%, and then you just need a real senior engineer to finish the other 80%. Right? Like you can do these things and you can get a lot of progress or what looks like a lot of progress, but you have to have the hygiene in order to continue to do that, in order to take things forward.
Right.
And that's an important piece, is having that good hygiene. Samuel brings up a question.
Hold on. Let me just add one more thing to that. I think the other piece of this is, and I think people who are working in enterprises on teams already know this, but maybe people who are just trying to like throw something together, throw a quick project together, maybe don't know this, but developers in enterprises, no matter whether you write the code or you ask Claude Code to plan something out and write the code, this is your code. You need to be able to explain it. You need to be able to go into a code review and properly talk about what this is if you get questioned on it. Again, none of this process changes. It's just speeding up everything because we have we have an assistant helping us out with these things, right?
That reminds me of last week. There was a couple of threads along the internet where this ability to go out and ask an LLM to generate code, combined with the number of people that are being asked to do these take-home projects, has spurred this. Hey, developer, I gave you this take-home coding assignment, and you gave me a result, and now I'd like to ask you a few questions. And the developers have no idea what they've submitted.
Right.
They can't explain any of the reasoning behind it. That nobody's going to hire you.
Right.
I don't want you in my utility company, in my bank, if you're just taking code to production and you don't understand it yourself. I don't want you working at.
I mean, if you're writing 0% of the code and you can explain everything and talk about why those decisions were made, perfect.
Different.
Yeah, very different.
Bring it. That's it's interesting. So I'm trying to bring in more of this AI assisted workflow, this pair programming into my life, and I'm just trying to find my routine. And your last your topic around using Claude Code, which I liked Claude Code. I've tried it. I like it. But yeah, I want to slightly different.
I did a video on it too. So if nobody's out there had a chance, that was published last week. So go ahead and check it out.
Fantastic. Samuel says, working on a project where we need to speed up applications ready for requests on a specific profile. I'll try lazy beans and stuff like that. Any advice? I got some advice.
Yeah, I know you do.
The first question I'm going to ask you is, which version of Spring are you on? The second question I'm going to ask you is, which version of Java are you on? Because I don't want you to go and do this deep dive and try to understand how beans are being loaded. What I want you to do first is upgrade to Spring Boot 3.5.3, upgrade to Java 24 or the latest Java that you can, because that's going to get you faster to ready for requests, faster than anything else that you're going to do. If you haven't done that, if you've already done that, then we're in a second. That's a different question. Then we get to talk about AOT, CDS. We get to talk about all the other runtime efficiencies that we get that takes a little bit of a knob switching, unless you're using cloud native build packs. You can do these things. So that's my first advice is get to the latest version of Spring Boot. Get to the latest possible version of Java that you can. Then let's look at some of the other runtime efficiencies like ahead of time compilation.
And just as important as that is track your progress along the way, right? Like, where are you at now? Make sure you have all the metrics of where you are, because as we start to make these small little improvements, upgrading a version of Java, upgrading a version of Spring, then we can start to track these and see what those performance gains are. And as DaShaun always says, now you have some ammo to go back to your boss and say, hey, look, I helped improve speed, time to request, and proficiency across number of applications by this much. And then, those are always great things to put on your resume too. So make sure you're tracking those requests.
Thank you so much for reminding me about that. Yes. Track it. You got to measure it.
Yep. The other thing I will say is you're on the right track too with beans. Now it depends on how big your app is. If you have a small app and you're loading, 50, 100 beans, not a big deal. But like in some of these enterprise apps, we're loading thousands of beans, and maybe we don't need all of these at the first time of request. That's a very good thing to go through and identify any of these beans that don't need to be available absolutely right away. But I will also say, be careful with that. You don't want to start pulling your hair out and trying to fix every one of those beans, because then you run into cyclical dependencies and some things depend on each other, and then things might blow up. So yes, that is a form of optimization that you can work on, but don't think that pulling your hair out over every one of those is going to be the greatest advantage that you're going to get. As DaShaun said, there are probably some other things you can do to get you some bigger performance gains there.
Fantastic. Simon mentioned hey, vibe coding, pull request, it's automatic by some code rabbit, and then merge I understand there's places that are doing this at scale already, but you're in a different mode, right? The startup mode, very different. But when you've got 20 million or 40 million customers on the line, that's different. So it could be worse. And you know what else could be worse? I hate to pick on you, Emma. But for everybody here, just imagine how much less you would enjoy going to work if you were still stuck on Java 6. And I'm so proud of Pink Emma for fighting the good fight and sticking it out. She's doing great things. Thank you for being here, Pink Emma. It could be worse.
What was I going to say?
And Greg's in here.
Yeah. Greg, thanks for joining us. That's awesome. The other cool thing, so with Claude Code, they have these things called slash commands. So you just hit slash and it has a bunch of commands that you can do some things with. You can create custom commands. I saw somebody last week who created a custom command to review code. So not only do we go through and plan all of this out, reiterate, refine, write code, refine, we're good, we have a branch, submit it. You can ask Claude Code to submit a PR and add the description to the commit to all of that. Then you can do a slash that goes, okay, now that that's done, go ahead and review that PR for me. So a lot like asking yourself to do that, but I've reviewed my own code before in a code review and went, oh, wait, that doesn't look right. Maybe I should change this, right? So not a bad idea.
Similar, continue.dev has these different roles that are defined. Something like chat, hey, I want to be able to talk, autocomplete, code generation, code review, syntax, whatever. But it's got these different roles, and you can assign the different roles to different LLMs. Mm-hmm. So if you're doing autocomplete, if that's what you want in your IDE, you can use a faster code-centric LLM to do your autocomplete. But for code generation or for your chat, you can use a different LLM. I've had a lot of fun trying to figure out which of these LLMs that I'm deploying on my laptop are the best for me. And my default has changed. I've definitely changed, and I'm leaning into different models than what I was even 2 weeks ago. And that's been fun. That's been a fun thing. And that's an important decision, right? Review your assumptions.
Yep. Okay, I got another question. He's asked twice here. So let me ask this. Hello, I've already asked about a year ago. Okay, so first off, we're going to come back to that first statement. HTTP exchange annotations can be used on controllers, not only clients. Any update there? For what reason? Maybe some proxy is being built. I don't think I knew that. Maybe I do remember you mentioning that. But I don't know. I don't use HTTP exchange annotations on controllers. I use them on an interface to build out a client. That's the only reason I use them. If that's there, I don't know why that's being built. So I would say if you've asked this a year and a half ago, we're probably not the best person to answer that question. I would go on the GitHub and I would ask that question or that issue of why that is there. What is that feature for? That would probably be the best place to get an answer to that.
Also, a lot of the Spring team still uses Stack Overflow.
Right.
The difference between using the LLMs versus a Stack Overflow, like ask that question. Proud of you for asking the question. Like absolutely, I don't know the answer, but don't be afraid to use Stack Overflow. We still have engineers on the Spring team that are actively looking at Stack Overflow. So I would say let's take that question there.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask this one. I keep getting lots of PR comments. You guys have any advice on writing clean code and having a good grasp of code to reduce bugs and finish tasks on time too?
Yes.
I'm struggling.
Yes. Great question. And I'd say one of the first comments I have on this is you keep getting a lot of PR comments. So you're within your organization, you're submitting these pull requests, you're going through a code review, you're getting a lot of comments on there. First thing might just be like your organization has a certain way of doing things, right? So the first thing is like maybe you just have to learn the way that your organization writes code and prefers things, because developers that have been there 5 to 10 years might just be used to doing things a certain way, and they might just be commenting like, hey, this is how we do this, right? So trying to conform to the standards of the organization might be the first thing. The second piece of advice I'd have is the same one I had with like the like a large language model writing code. Take this as an opportunity to learn. So instead of just trying to go through here and close comments or respond to them, get in an active discussion. Maybe somebody makes a comment and right away, okay, I understand why that comment was made. Don't use a for loop here, stream over it, and whatever the comment is. If it makes sense, take that advice and carry that on to the next project. The next time that you write code, remember that comment that you got. The other thing I would say is don't just blindly take that advice. If you don't understand it or you have pushback, this is an opportunity to have that conversation. That's why we have code reviews, so that we can get the code right, but also that we can kind of teach everyone and learn from everyone on how we should be doing things. So ask questions. Again, the only dumb questions are one not asked, right? Like ask a question like, I feel like this is a good implementation here. Why would you change it to that? What is your thought process behind that? And have a conversation. This is a learning experience. If you just blindly try and write code all the time without like really understanding it, then you're never going to really kind of learn and take that experience into the next time that you're writing that same kind of code.
I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with a lead engineer, somebody that's in charge of doing code reviews, and they were frustrated that they were saying the same comments. They're responding to the same things all the time, and the engineers that were getting these weren't learning from it. So two interesting things. One of our friends, what they've done is they've got rules in place. When code comes in, that automatically scans the code, looks for things that it sees all the time, and it's automatically going to say, hey, it does a feedback, so that somebody's not spending time to write the same comments about things that they've written for dozens or hundreds of other engineers. So they've got like an automatic PR process, going back to this automation and having this in place. But now on the receiving end, as an engineer, this is a practice that I want you to just consider. I'm not doing it today, but I want you to consider it. If somebody gives you a PR and they say, hey, this block here, and here's the comment, don't do it this way because this is what we do. What would happen if you kept track of those? What would happen if you kept track of a list, even a markdown document of code samples that got kicked back and the comments that got kicked back with them? What if you put in some automation that says, hey, make sure I'm not doing any of these things. I've got this markdown file. Make sure I'm not breaking into these rules that have had things get sent back to me. How hard would that be? So that you're not doing the same mistakes twice. That's the goal is, hey, comments, you're learning the language, right? Fire's hot. That's great. But once you learn the fire's hot, let's not do that again. Let's not touch that fire. Let's not get our code sent back for the same thing. Let's keep track and let's learn from our mistakes in order to go forward. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. The other thing I will say is I've been in organizations too where there are comment warriors out there who want to spend their day over commenting on things and having philosophical discussions about every line of code written. If that comes up, that is when you need to have a conversation with your manager, with the team lead, and say, listen, I understand this is to improve our code quality, but this is getting a little bit out of hand. I'm not getting anything else done because I'm spending hours and hours on very simple like code reviews, right? And so Simon kind of says, good merger March. Yeah.
There's
don't
definitely people that take it too far.
Yeah, for sure. And try to think of that when you're on both. There's code reviews are a two-way street, right? Think about it as a commenter and somebody who is also submitting. So when you see like good feedback on some code that you've written, remember that, like how that made you feel, so that when you go into a code review, you're not just nitpicking or over commenting. You're trying. This is meant to provide feedback. So if you have some like useful feedback, it's not a process that you just check off and move on, especially today when we have, the LLMs are writing so much code. We need that human in the loop to go ahead and verify all of these things, because large language models don't have the context of all the things that you're building in your organization. So I think code reviews become more important than ever. And Nate and I are going to be talking about this later this year. I feel like a lot of people have been saying like, oh man, I wish I didn't go to like 4 years of college to learn all the fundamentals of software engineering. Like, I don't need that these days. I'm in the exact opposite camp. I think the fundamentals of software engineering are more important than ever. The things that we talked about at the beginning of the show with like processes and code reviews and all the things that make the software development lifecycle what it is. That's why I'm so bullish on AI. And that's why whenever these like CEOs and people who make tools get on Twitter and news and say, oh yeah, it's going to be very disruptive for the software industry. Sure, maybe one day. I don't see it anytime soon. I see us, and maybe some junior engineers, maybe it's disrupting that a little bit, but I say software development as a whole, like it's not going anywhere anytime soon because of that. You still need that process in place.
Hey, I had a question about Spring AI MCP with security. I know, Dan, you did a video on adding OAuth 2 to it and mentioned talking about fine-grained security in the future. Any news on that? Do you have any plans?
No. So I want to get a video. I talked to Daniel Garnier-Moreau on that. He did the article series. If you go on spring.io/blog and just look up Daniel's Spring AI MCP, there are 2 parts that at least, maybe there's a third one, maybe I could be wrong there. There's 2 parts. I did a video on the first one. The second one went into not just like the high level, it went in a little bit deeper. So go look up that blog post and see if you can take a look through it. I asked Daniel if he wanted to record a video with me and go through that article and do a video on that. So we're hoping to do that at some point, but it's just based on that article. So that article should give you what you need. Now, I will say, though, That was written before. So the security in general in MCPs has been a big topic of conversation, because when MCP protocol came out, it wasn't really thought about. It kind of got put in afterwards, and the specification for security has changed over the last few months, because more and more people were putting MCP servers out in the public and realizing like, oh, okay, yeah, we need to secure these things, right? We saw some articles coming up on some of the MCP servers out there kind of getting compromised. So there's been an update to the specification. If you want to go ahead and if you go over to modelcontextprotocol.io, I believe you can read a little bit more about that spec. So that is ever changing. And if you are putting MCP servers out in the public, which is using something like HTTP and server sent events, or the streamable version of it, which is fairly new, then you're going to want to make sure you're securing these. If you're just kind of throwing these on your laptop and they have access to your laptop, that's a little bit different of a scenario. But yeah, definitely something important. Go ahead and check out the blog for that.
Good stuff. Spring Security is continuously evolving. Manning also has some great books on it, and there's Spring Academy. There's tons of places to learn. The comment about developers kind of copying config from project to project, if they're upgrading, yeah, that's going to change. One of the things that Spring Security has done is the security landscape has changed. The defaults have changed. That looks like an amazing book.
Oh, it's a really good book.
That's
and there's a second. Oh yeah, this is Lars. I don't think this is the second. I don't have the second edition, do I? Is this the second edition? There is this. This is the second edition. That's why it looks so shiny and new. I must have the first edition back there somewhere. But yeah, for those of us at home, Spring Security in Action, second edition, by Lore, forward by Joe Granda. Look at that. So yeah, Laura's has like a YouTube channel too, goes through a bunch of stuff. Definitely somebody I like talking. And then Daniel, anytime Daniel talks about security, I listen. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
I didn't realize that he streamed his writing sessions. That is an amazing idea.
I would never do that because my writing, what I've learned about my writing sessions working on these books is that I am very neurotic. I just have to like dump everything out, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. I've learned that I'm a better editor than a writer. I just need to dump everything out and then go, okay, that's good. Let me kind of formalize these thoughts. So I would never want anyone to see those.
I could stream. The way that I write is I don't write, I talk. I do a session just like this. I hit the record button, I record the video or I record the audio, and I transcribe it. And that's how I get started. That I take my talk, my conversation with you or with somebody or with myself, I record that, and that's how I do my writing. And then I just go through and edit it from there.
Nice.
Here's a question. When's the last time you've even considered service mesh? Do you have any opinions on service mesh, Dan?
I have none. So I'm going to lean on you for that.
I do have opinions on service mesh. I think there's places where it works. But I think that service mesh gets used a lot of times because it's an option. It gets used in a lot of places that it shouldn't get used. Earlier in today's episode, I talked about active-active. One of the things that people have used service mesh for is like, hey, I'm over here in region A and I want to call a service over in region C. I don't want to have it deployed over there. So they're doing these really high latency calls, and then they're wondering why it doesn't behave right. They're wondering like, hey, service mesh, like it's too slow. It doesn't work. It doesn't work when you're trying to connect services across the globe, across regions. And that is something that when you give, you have to use the right tool for the job. And a lot of times, right, when you put a service mesh on the menu, it's going to get used. Maybe it's for the right decision, maybe it's not. But a lot of times where I'm getting pulled into a conversation is when a service mesh is being used for something that it shouldn't be used for something like calling a service on another region, where they didn't want to change the architecture. Hey, I'm going to pull a service mesh on, that's going to allow me to make these calls. but that's not the right thing to do. So I have opinions, and I've seen more projects get hurt from adding a service mesh than projects get helped. But there are use cases where service mesh is a great idea. You have to know the difference.
Would you say it depends?
I would absolutely say it depends.
Everybody hates hearing that, but it's the truth in our industry. It really just depends. There are answers and solutions to everything, pros and cons to everything, every solution that you pick. And as you mentioned earlier, like, you should stick around to see the ramifications of what you chose, so that you can learn from it. So yeah.
This comment: Spring Security forces me to follow user details interface. It doesn't force you. What Spring Security is doing, just like the rest of Spring, it's providing you an abstraction that allows you to do things without having to think about the table, the role prefix. You get these things as opinions from the Spring team that you can follow, but you don't have to. You don't have to use Spring Security. You can do these things manually. The nice thing about Spring Security is it continues to evolve as the ecosystem evolves, but it doesn't force you to do anything. What's the alternative? The alternative is you decide all of the conventions that you're going to use in security, and then when the security standards change or when the library changes, then you've got to do all the work to migrate to the new version, right? If your library doesn't have any idea about your implementation details, if there's no connective tissue, then how is it supposed to grow with you? Having these abstractions allows you to move and to grow as the framework evolves. And that's definitely a strength, not a weakness.
Love it.
Standards never hurt, right? Having these patterns, it's so that we can go faster, right? These things are in place, not to give you any heartburn. They're in place so that you can go faster. Having these approved things that are on the menu, that is so that we can go faster. We can get to production faster. That's a benefit.
Yeah.
Simon says service meshes are like umbrellas. Consider why you're bringing one along if there are alternate solutions, right? I like that. Service meshes are like umbrellas. I like that.
I never use an umbrella. So.
You don't have to use role prefix. That's optional. Yep.
Cool. Well, heck, that's it. That's an hour, DaShaun.
Man,
that flew by.
It flies by. It flies by when you're having fun.
It does.
I would like to do another one of these in the near future. What I'm going to ask everybody that's here is, we're on the internet. Dan and myself, we're on the internet. If you've got questions, you don't have to be here for the live show. If you're listening to the podcast, thank you. Leave a comment, but you can always reach out to us if you've got things that you would like to hear about. What we're trying to do is give you the TLDR. We want to keep you up to date on what's happening in the ecosystem, show you the power-ups, show you the cheat codes. And if there's something on your mind, reach out and let us know.
Yeah. One really good place to do that is springofficehours.io. So if you go over to springofficehours.io, on the top, there's a little episode request. I would even say if you just want to ask us a question there, you can go ahead and do that. Maybe we'll add something to ask a question. But send these questions in. Even if you don't want to join the live stream and ask these questions, reach out to us or submit it there. We'll compile enough of these and then do another Q&A. Come armed with some questions and be able to answer those. So yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. I also want to throw this out there, DaShaun. I think what I want to do is I want to line up some of the speakers going that are speaking at SpringOne. So August is right around the corner. Maybe we could have 3 or 4 speakers that are going to be talking at SpringOne, just kind of previewing their session and talking about the things that they're going to be speaking about. So maybe we'll do that as well.
That sounds wonderful. I like that idea.
But July 21st. Crazy.
Thanks everybody for being here.
All right.
We'll catch you next
thanks.
time.
Yeah, thanks for joining our Q&A, and we will see you in the next one. Have a good one, everyone.